the inspiration for it came from thinking about the life of Chad. And I did the Two Saints Way a few years ago, and I was learning about Chad then and discovered that he grew up and was educated in Lindisfarne and then ended up coming to Mercia and to Lichfield. And I still can remember a moment of thinking, wouldn't it be fun to walk from Lindisfarne to Lichfield? And it's one of those really mad ideas, but that just wouldn't let go of me.
The Two Kingdoms Way are from the two kingdoms of Northumbria in the north and Mercia, which is of course our own kingdom in the Midlands. And those two kingdoms in Chad's time were at war with each other almost all the time. So I think there's something quite powerful about joining the two together with a message of peace and reconciliation.
It's been about 480 miles altogether. We've cut it into stages. So started in July from Lindisfarne last year. We spent a week up in Northumberland, then a week from Jarrow across to Durham.
One of the places I remember particularly is a village, an old mining village called Keller in County Durham, where we were inundated with cake of every variety, and then they took us into the churchyard and said, here are a lot of trees and we're naming them after saints, would you like to choose one? And then 6 weeks later I got a very elaborate carved wooden box in the post with the first conker from St Chad's chestnut tree in Keller. I thought that was just great.
We've been doing it in sort of long weekends of a few days at a time over the winter months. About 5 days ago we started in Nottingham and came along the Trent via Melbourne and Repton, and we've made it here today, which I can't quite believe it yet.
This is the first group of walking pilgrims we've entertained for the last 2 and a bit years, and so there's much joy, as you can probably hear, and receiving such a large group.
The amazing thing is you get to places that you wouldn't get to otherwise, little villages and towns, and you see the life of the church and the life of the community, and it all fits together. It's all kind of threaded through with this great story of pilgrimage.
Bishop Michael has been a huge encouragement, and in fact he came up with the title, the name for the pilgrimage. I created a route. It was interesting to do, to sort of looking at maps and looking at history and trying to find places where there was a definite connection with Chad and include those places on the map. And so the name of the Two Kingdoms Way came about because of connecting these kingdoms of Northumbria and Mercia, which were always at war with each other, always in conflict. And yet Chad was somebody who came from Northumbria and finished his life in Mercia and was clearly very loved and not only accepted but really loved in Mercia, despite having come from, if you like, enemy territory. And that's a fascinating thing, and makes you think. Obviously we know he was a very special person, but he really touched people's hearts, I think, to have been remembered for so many years, 1350 years. And so hence the name of the two kingdoms is the kingdoms of Northumbria and Mercia, and I very much like the idea of bringing those kingdoms together and a sense of reconciliation. I've always loved walking from as long as I can remember, and lots of people have different ideas about pilgrimage. I guess at its simplest, I would say there's a sense of purpose or intention about it that is beyond just going for a nice walk or just going from A to B. I find it interesting that it's something that can be meaningful to people of whether they have a faith or not. It's something that is important actually to most of the world's major faiths as well. And in some respects, I would say one of the big things that I find about it is there's a sense of connection that one gets, and that at many different levels. There's a connection with history, particularly in this context, in the sense of Chad, and just that feeling of moving through a landscape that he would have moved through, which then also gives you a sense of connection with the landscape and the history of our land itself. And then there's a connection with people that one's walking with, the communities that you meet along the way, and you make new connections. And when you are walking on pilgrimage, you connect with people in a very different way to almost any other setting, I think. You can have conversations that go quite deep. You can talk about all sorts of things. You can talk about deep spiritual things, or you can just have a laugh, and of course inevitably all sorts of weird and silly things happen as well when you're on pilgrimage. There was a wonderful moment when we were coming from Whitby towards York, and we came up across the North York Moors, and we knew we were on an old pilgrim path there, and we know that Chad's brother Ced had been at the Synod of Whitby, and he was also the abbot at Lastingham. And so when we were walking that route, there was a very strong sense, well, we know that Ced was certainly there, and up on the moors there's a huge stone cross which was a waymarker for pilgrims, and you could see it from miles about in this huge landscape. And walking past that and then coming into Lastingham, where we then also know that when Ced died, his brother Chad came and took over as abbot. So again, being in that place where one knows historically that Chad was there, but an incredible sense of presence, and sitting in the crypt below the church in Lastingham was quite a profound experience.